Welcome to YOUCANIC. Today here on YOUCANIC we have a 2014 Volkswagen Tiguan. On this Tiguan, this has the 2.0 TSI motor, and we are going to go over how you would replace your water pump. We want to be removing this intake manifold. There's a series of a bunch of stuff that we need to remove to get out of the way. To start with, we will remove this air box and the air box, as well as the mass airflow sensor connector. So the air box, you have just one bolt that's right down here, and that is a T25 that you will loosen to be able to get that removed. And let's undo this clip here. This is a press the clip to get it to unlock, and it's a press, and then it moves the tab up in here and it comes unlocked. So we unlock that, push it out of the way. There's a spring clamp that goes around here. Got it down here. So you would want to undo that spring clamp so that you can get this connector off. And then with that all done, we have this portion of the air box that's just got squeeze it. And we can pull this portion, and then we'll pull the whole box out just by pulling up. There's a rubber grommet. There's one rubber grommet on the back side that holds this in. So that's removed. Gives us more space to be reaching around down in here. And then remove this decorative engine cover, just held on by grommets. And set that aside. So with that stuff removed, we can get to some other lines that we want to undo. This is an air line, vacuum line that goes into your PCV valve, and so we're going to squeeze these connectors and remove that just to get it up and out of our way. This here is your fuel line. We don't want to, we're not going to undo it there, so we're just going to undo these clips here and be able to bend and fashion that fuel line back in there. We have one clip right here. Pull it apart. That's also a vacuum line. That one is a fairly stiff plastic, so do our best just to move it, but we don't want to break it. And we have this clip here that goes to your cam position sensor. So we'll just undo that. And then up here on the front, this is your vapor canister purge valve. We'll undo that electric connection, and then we can undo this clamp here just so that this can sit. It can be free and it can be all out of the way. Another electric connector here goes in the throttle body, one hooked, as well as another one down here. That way all that electric is out of the way. Okay, so we have two T30s that's holding a bracket here with a bunch of electrical connectors on to our throttle body. So that's removed from the, I said throttle body, but the intake manifold. And then we have one more that's over here, well actually two. One that's on the bottom here and one that's on the outside. We'll want to remove that. These are some of the water cooling lines. Okay, so that's free and away. Then you'll want to loosen this connector. It's a clamp for the part of the intake system, the air tube. So you'll want to remove that, loosen the clamp, and then you can be able to get that down out of the way for when you undo this component. We have a series of T30s. Along the top and some down along the bottom, and then we'll be able to pop this up a little bit and be able to get some other components off under it. So those are the ones on the top, and then the ones on the bottom, you'll feel the indents. So that one down there is a 10mm stud. We got one right through here. Okay, so we have two 10mm studs on the side, and we have the two T30s in the middle there. So I'm going to get a 10mm extension, get in there, and get that studs out, and then it should be free. We still got some electric connections to undo on the bottom from the injectors. So we've got to the final push to be able to pull this off. Now we had all the T30 screws that we undid, the 10mm nuts. We have to undo this fuel line, which that's just a 17mm wrench, tightened right there. And so we've undone that. There's an electrical connector that goes to this actuator on the side. And then we also need to just remove the oil filter, and so we'll remove the oil filter so we can get clearance to get the intake manifold off over here. This oil filter is unique design that essentially everything stays inside it when you undo it. We have one electric connector down here to undo, and we're going to put some paper towel over the oil filter hole, or you can plastic bag it to protect debris from getting in there. And then you can, to get this free, you're just going to pull, and it can be pretty tough because you're going to get the what do you call it? The injector gasket or seals to break free. And we're able to bring it up. We got to get some space enough to undo some more electric connectors under there that go into so those were just some clips that we're holding in there, holding that bracket on. And we got this one electric connector to undo. Which is a fuel pressure sensor. So we undo that and pull this out. And that would be your removal of your intake manifold, as well as your throttle body. Left that attached. And then some various things that are connected on here. This fuel pressure sensor, and then this is direct port injection. It's all able, the direct port injection here, but we came out without removing the injectors themselves. The water pump is this right here. It's this housing. You've got a water pump and thermostat built into the same housing. And we're driven by a belt that's on the back side here. 2 bolts, remove that cover, and then there's a belt under there that drives this water pump. And it's bolted right here to the side of the motor. And so to gain easy access to it, you remove the intake manifold as well. And so we've removed that. And then these wires here they're connectors to the injectors. So we undid those to be able to get those up and out of the way. And then next, we have this is the down pipe that goes to the front mount intercooler intake. And so we're going to remove that from down below and be able to drain the coolant out of this engine. And go to there. So down below, this is the part of the front mount intercooler. And so if you just pull this clip back a little bit, you're going to pull the clip back, and then this will come undone. It's already been undone, but you just pull it about halfway, and then it'll come undone, and then that'll release. Then we have 2 bolts. There's 2 bolts over here that mount to the block, and this one electric connector that we need to get undone from a sensor there. So the sensor's undone. Those 2 bolts were removed previously. And so now we'll be able to just pull and remove this whole unit out of the way. We'll set that aside. And now we need to drain the coolant. So we're going to just undo this connector right here and pull that undone to drain the coolant out of the system. We'll want to undo this electric connector here too. There's that sensor there, just goes into the it's your temperature sensor. And so we also want to undo, we've got the upper line and then this line here, and what you need, there is a clip, and we just need to open that up with the screwdriver, and then we can pull these connectors off. So I undid the connector there. We should be able to just pull this. Okay, so we have the connections undone from the bottom. Now we'll be able to get the other components up here undone. So we have a T30 here that holds this bracket on, as well as the T30 that's down here. So we'll start with and then we have one connector here. We'll undo this. We have this connector to be, we can undo over here. And then we've got the one T30 under there. So we got that removed. And with that removed, we now have easy enough access to get all those other T30s to remove. We've got this from the cover. Let's start with those. This is the cover that holds the belt, is under this. And so there's our belt. Okay, now we're just going to go around. So we got all the bolts removed. So just be able to pop that out. We've got our belt. We want to slide off. And then we'll be able to pull this out. There's a rubber little chunk here with some rubber gasket on it. And that's the removal of our water pump. And the old water pump, a lot of times what happens is they can crack over time. So you'll either find a crack or just the water pump itself wears out. So we'll go over the process of how to put it back on. And in a second, we got to do some cleanup down here and we'll be good to go. Here is our new water pump. It's a little bit different than the one that we had, just the fact that this is a metal casing, an aluminum casing instead of the plastic casing. So it's a bit of an upgrade for this engine. This is just a protective shield for the fins there. We're going to leave that on as we put the belt on, and then I'll remove that, this little yellow plastic cover there. And everything else is the same. We've got new O-rings for the inlet pipes, and there's a new O-rings and little gasket here that goes into the engine oil cooler. Everything is mounted and ready to be bolted on, and cleaned up the surface of the engine there and cleaned up the ports here to be able to have the best adhesion here. So we're going to drop this down in, be able to line up that black plastic on the side here for the cooler, engine cooler. Okay, so we have the belt on that side. Put this connector in and be able to line it up. Belt is on. We can go ahead and remove this cover. We have our 5 screws to put in, the 3 long ones right here, and the 2 shorter on this side. Okay, so we got our T30. And we are just going to snug these up at the moment, and then we will torque them to spec. Okay, so we torque them to a 10 foot-pound torque. Okay, so those are all torqued to spec. Now we can go ahead and put the remainder of the hoses back on. Now we've got new O-rings on the connectors here, and so we need to remove the old O-rings that were in here. And pop those new ones in there. So I've put the new O-rings in here. They've got some water lubricant on it, so they should be good, easy to connect. Now, this one goes on the outside one. This is your upper pipe, and then your lower one goes on the inside one closest to. And they can only go one way. They've got these tabs that are going to line up. And then, so since we're putting them on, we'll just push the snap clip in. And what you do is you're going to pull them up toward you or push it up from under. And it's gonna make a click noise, and that ring's gonna click right into that groove on the connector. Success with that one. It's the same one with this. I want to make sure we run this one down below all of that electric, because we want that electric connections to be up top. We got those two connected. We'll put the cover plate back on here. It's a longer screw into the transmission side, small screw into the water pump housing. Okay, so we have this pipe bracket, put a new O-ring on there. Alright, those are good and snug. You just got to move the clamps to their clamping position, and then also put the lower hose on and clamp, as well as the electrical connector for the sensor, and then get everything prepped and ready to put your intake manifold back on. Get that all lined up and situated. And so that's how you would replace your water pump. We're ready to put our intake manifold back on. We removed it to be able to work on the water pump and replace that water pump. And so now we're able and ready to put our intake manifold back on. A few things with your intake manifold. Once you take it off, you're going to want to make sure you clean up this surface down here and polish it up, and you put a new rubber gasket inside the intake manifold there. We have our injectors right here connected. 1, 2, 3. I left this one undone, the fourth one, just so that this wire will hang down a little lower, so that when the glides go over here on these studs, they don't get in the way. We have one connector under it that connects to the fuel rail, and then this one connector over here that connects to the outside of the intake manifold. Then just be able to situate it in there, get the bolts in, get them started, and then we'll go through that process. We're going to get it sit over here. And with those studs, we can kind of have a guide of where to slide this thing down on. Connecting the electrical connector for the fuel sensor, and then this other electrical connector here for the that goes into the throttle body. And with those connected, you gotta pull the part of the wiring harness is getting jammed up under there. That's what I'm moving back. Okay, so we got that pretty much out of the way. It's situated right on where the injectors are, and now we're just gonna. We got the fuel line that's making that noise. We just rock and push it in, and that way it seats on there. Now we can start all the bolts in and go through that process. So we have, on this particular model, we have 5 bolts on top, so 7 bolts, 2 on the bottom, and also we have a 2 nuts that we have to put on the bottom. So we just get these 5 dropped in here on the top. And 2 on the bottom. We've got 1 here, and we've got 1 right through here. And we have our 2 number 10 nuts, 1 on this side, 1 on this side. Okay, so we have our T30, and now we're just going to go around. This will go around in a series of star pattern, alternating from top and bottom. First we're going to just bring it up snug, and then we'll go back and do the final tightening. Okay, so we've done the first series of tightening. Now we just go back around, finalizing the tightening. So we've got all those bolts all tightened up. Now we can start the process of some of the electrical to be rehooked up. Okay, so the bracket, we want to make sure we connect this final injector connector up. I'm going to click the wiring harness up. Okay, so we were working on the wiring harness down here, making sure that it's situated where it needs to be under the intake manifold. That's the wiring harness that's holding the wires mainly for the fuel injectors. And so we get that all situated, we're good there. Then we've got to make sure that we rehook up our fuel line, which is the stainless steel looking line. Make sure we hook it up and then tighten it. That is a 17 millimeter. Okay, now we can, this is the purge valve. Going to come up top here. We have this bracket that holds a bunch of electrical screws to put in to hold it up. Two number T30 screws. Okay, so we have those in place. We'll reattach this and the electric connector that goes to it, as well as the vacuum line. We've got this little vacuum line that's going to run into it right here up at the top. And then we can put the fuel line back in its connectors there. There's a purge valve line. We have an assortment of electrical connectors that are going to go into the purge valve, throttle body, so you'll move your clamp there. Then we have this other vacuum line that connects from your PCV valve into the throttle body there. That's everything on this side. You'll want to make sure that you put your oil filter back in, and because we take the oil filter out to be able to have access to remove this, so you'll need to put your oil filter back in, remount this bracket with two T30 screws, and then you'll need to reconnect the downpipe or intake system on your vehicle. And that's how you would install your intake manifold on your 2014 TSI 2.0 motor. Fairly similar. There might be a few brackets differently on other TSIs, but the procedure will be pretty much the same. Thanks for watching YOUCANIC, where you can be the